In our understanding, God is in the heart. God is also present in his creation. It's his energy. But essentially, the closest relationship we have is to God because he is present with us always from the moment of our birth till beyond our departure from this body. And so a lot of our faith and practice is how we can kind of realize that connection and be present in it and experience it. That's what we focus on. There are Eastern traditions that focus on God not being a person or your soul also not being a person. And essentially they teach you that either you do not exist ultimately at the final conclusion, or you're just one with everything. And that's, a branch of the Eastern tradition, but it's not what we practice. And in our understanding, it's not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality in our tradition of devotion is that we are a person. Our soul has its nature. Just like we exist now, our soul also has its own nature, and so does God. That's our understanding. And so a lot of the Eastern mysticism you hear about is also part of our knowledge system. But the higher levels of the knowledge system is actually how to develop and realize your relationship with God in your heart first. For us, it said sound is the closest thing to the spiritual kind of dimension, if that makes sense. In the Bible, it says it's the logos, and that's generally said the word to be the word. But it's not the written word, it's the spoken word. Does that make sense? It's the sound. And the sound is also connected to the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. For us, in our tradition, we say the Veda, which is the original source of knowledge for us, is not a written text. It's not a document. It's the sound of the breath of God and his wisdom that he gives us into this world. So it's sound. So for us, it's a big part of our practice. The sounds are the way by which we express our heart, essentially, our moods. So for us, we say that sound is something ultimately spiritual. Mm-hmm. In our conception, matter is just an expression of spirit, ultimately of the Spirit of God. And so for us, sound is very important. It's how we come closer to the experience of God in the heart. Beyond, reading and study, we take shelter of that sound vibration, and we also serve in that vibration of sound. That's why we go to churches and we hear the choir or the bells or the singing, the gospel, even prayer. For us, it's a big part of our tradition. We don't just meditate silently. We believe that there's a power of sound to awaken our higher consciousness. And so we come together. A big element of our faith is to come together and pray. There's so many traditions, but essentially our primary activity is to pray together with sound, to pray to God. And we understand that, again, in our faith, that Christ would say, hallowed be thy name. It's in the Bible, right? That the name of God itself is holy. But when we utter it, in our conception, the name of God has all the power of God within him. We think of the name as God as personal. It's actually the personhood of God can be present in his name. And so when we're calling out his name in prayer, he can reciprocate in that way directly. And we can see that, if you're in a room and say, oh, Teresa, right? She'll come because she's nearby and she can hear. And so in our understanding, God is omnipresent because all of existence is his expansion of his energy. We understand that our individual spirit pervades our body, our awareness, and our surroundings right now in the room. Our consciousness is filling up this room because we're looking around. Wherever you're looking at, wherever you're paying attention, your consciousness is projecting itself there. Now, the beauty of calling out the name of God in prayer is that all of existence is his emanation, and so he has awareness of everything. It's supreme consciousness, whereas our consciousness is individuated in our body, but God's is omnipresent. When we talk about God being omnipresent, it's because an example is given of the sun. Anywhere there's sunlight, the sun is present in its potency. And so if we call out the name of God, then God is present there and can reciprocate with our prayer. God incarnated as his own devotee to teach us how to love him and how to experience his love. This is our basic core tenet, that God incarnated as his own devotee to teach us how to experience his love and to express our love in a relationship with him. And in such a way that it transcends the dynamic of a worshiper to the worshipable Godhead, but goes into the realm of personal friendship and intimacy and love, where the expression of your worship and your adoration to God is in a friendship, or it's in a love relationship that is very natural to us, that we express in this world through, with our children, with our partners, with our family, with our friends. We have an exchange of love that we naturally express. And so there are many ways to approach God, and there are many valid ways to approach God. But specifically in our tradition, when you hear about Krishna in his own kind of heavenly realm, his relationship there isn't based on worshiping him with reverence or even fear or opulence. It's an intimate friendship that he himself relishes, because we understand love to be something spiritual, right? So just like we experience love with each other and friendship with each other, that desire for love and relationship and exchange is something coming from the ontological source of existence, God, right? God is the original source. So that desire for us to love and to have an exchange of love is coming from God. And so therefore, our practice is to facilitate that relationship of love, transcending any kind of barrier of, because when we're worshiping God on a throne and we are bowing down before him, that is us being finite, worshiping the infinite. And that is a stage of development. But in our tradition, our teachers state that actually he prefers the intimate friendship more than worshiping him in his majesty. This is a core part of our particular faith, that he prefers, you go to many temples where it's based on, it's the opulence and the majesty of God, which is true. And we worship God as the great. But it said, he in his own teaching says, I prefer the intimate friendships with my devotees, where it's not so much that they don't revere me, they do. How can you not revere God and worship God? But beyond that, you come to a state of intimate friendship with God. And that's a big part of our faith. It's a process through which we come to the experience. We start with the idea of trust in God. This is a core part of our practice. To trust, we can call it faith, but even for us, we call it more deeply trust. That God is my protector, my maintainer. He is my guide. He will bring me, if I pray for that, he will bring me closer to him. So we begin with that. And for us also, a big part of it is to understand that we are conscious. And so that means we have power to experience reality according to our desires. All right? We are spirit, we are conscious. So we have the ability to experience reality according to our desires, like a channel. So if we are focusing on something, we can enter that state of being. God has given each of us free will, and we say that is sacred, and he never takes that away. Therefore, we all have choice. And so a big part of our process is to embrace that path that leads us to pure love and relationship, and try to avoid those things that bring our consciousness into experiences that are not blissful, are not beautiful.
It's like going into work every day and I say, I hate my job, I hate my job, I hate my job, you have a negative day. Or if you go into your job in the morning and you say, this is a beautiful place to be, thank God I have a job, your day is so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, it's little things. It's little things. So that's a little bit of an introduction from my side. I've practiced this since I was a little kid. I lived in India for 16 years in a monastery there. And we started our ashram upstate in 2020, and I travel now. Last year I spent a lot of the time traveling around the world, but very happy to be here. And I really like to focus on telling people, we all have our different practices. I think it's very important. I don't think there's enough honor for each other in our different faiths. We tend to be culturally chauvinistic. Oh, this is my faith and it's right. That's not our attitude. I know that's not your attitude, but I'm just saying from my side, it's common for a spiritual teacher to say, this is what's right and do this. But whatever sounds, good, I think it's more about the practice, because otherwise it's easy to speak beautiful words, beautiful ideas. For me, it's the practice.
Relationship, friendship you have with God.
Yeah, that's a big part of it for us. We believe in, that worshiping God is what we do, right? As souls, we worship God. Mm-hmm. But that He came in this specific incarnation as His devotee to teach us that actually I prefer it if you love me as a friend than if you worship me even. And it's a stage of growth as a soul to, they say fear of God. It's like you tell a child, don't put the fork in the socket. So fear of God is a stage of evolution, and it helps you live a moral life and not harm others. But you can transcend that without losing, right? We say, don't harm others. We call that a sub-religious principle. That means real religion means to love God and to love each other. That's what Christ said, love each other as I have loved thee, right? That's religion. But then, okay, I also am going to tell you, maybe you can't just love each other purely, but at least try not to murder each other. Yeah. Try not to start wars and kill each other. Mm-hmm. So that's a sub-dharma. It's a sub-religious principle. So the point is that if you're actually loving each other and you're loving God, then naturally you're not going to harm each other. Naturally, you're not going to murder each other. You're not going to steal from each other. So they're all the different commandments that we follow as well. But what is the highest commandment? Love God with all thy heart. Love thy fellow. Love thy neighbor as yourself, right? So for us, what we practice is a monotheistic faith based on devotion to God. And He incarnated to teach us how to love Him and to experience His love. I like to tell people, love is a two-way street. God loves you, more than you can imagine, but it's also in our best interest to learn how to connect with God in a real way. And what is the realest way? Just like we heard the sound, it's prayer, it's sound, it's the hymn, it's a gospel, and it's also meditation. But we believe there's a special potency in sound, more than just in silent meditation. Because especially if you utter the name of God, it's said in this age, our Lord Chaitanya taught that God's invested His own power in His own names. And if you call out to the names of God, we don't say, you have to call out this name of God. Whatever your name of God is, we say God is one, different names, but we believe strongly that if you call out the name of God, we chant in our rosary, our beads. I know Catholics, we have rosary, whether we're chanting Hail Mary or, if we're sincerely calling out to God, God is not, I'll give you an interesting idea because there's different yoga systems, right? They say in certain yoga systems, if you utter the syllables wrong, you don't get the result you want. But that's not in the devotional practice, because just like a child, they don't have to say their mother's name properly. Papa, mama, if you say muma, mama, pupa, you understand. So in the same way, even if you don't call out the name of God properly, or you don't call out what you want to call the right name of God, if you're sincerely calling out to God, who are we to say, He cannot hear your intention? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? We believe that God accepts your mood and your desire and your intention. So it's not that you have to pronounce it right even. Other traditions of yoga, if you don't pronounce it right, you don't do the right exercise, then you're considered, you're not good enough or this or that. But any way you're praying to God and calling out the names, His power is there, and that can create an awakening. Mm-hmm. So for us, I'll leave with one thought, and then any things you want to talk about, or we can finish. That incarnation of God who appeared as His devotee, we call Chaitanya, which means divine consciousness. And He said that by this mantra meditation, we chant the Hare Krishna mantra. By this mantra, it leads to a very powerful transformation that is inside you. And he said it's like a cleansing of your consciousness. It helps awaken your consciousness of your true spiritual identity. It helps eradicate suffering in life. It helps he speaks about it in a metaphorical way. Because again, the reason I wanted to end on this is, how do you explain it in words? So he explains it in these very beautiful metaphorical terms. Because again, how can you explain something ineffable, something transcendental? He said it's inconceivable. So you experience it. Like we're talking about God, right? And it's like words. But when you pray to God and you connect with God and you have friendship with God and you have trust in God, that's something beyond words. So he said, if you follow this mantra process or process of devotion through mantra sound, he said it leads to a cleansing. Like he describes the heart to be like a mirror, and it becomes clean. And then you can see your true self and you can see God. This is what he says first. You can see yourself and you can see God. So he says it's like cleansing the heart, which is like a mirror. And in your heart, you are not alone, but God is present. This is our faith. I'm not simplifying our faith. I'm actually just speaking it in English.
Well, you know what? While you saying these words, we do understand. Because I think there's been times in all of our lives that we've had that experience. Right? That you felt like completely one with God, and God is in me and God is here. And,
but as we grew within the yoga, practice and stuff like that, you realize people pray. I've actually prayed from my heart and felt the hand of God.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it. So once you feel that, then you know. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, I won't pick on people, but there's a lot of Catholic people around me, and they pray that they'll win the lottery, or they'll pray. That's not what we're talking about. Like I've actually been in pain emotionally and prayed and felt his relief, his presence, his whatever. So sometimes people are praying, but what they're praying for, oh God, I need a new car. Material attachments and stuff like that. So once you realize, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but once you realize the right way to pray and the right way to connect with God and your spiritual sense and the vibrations that you put out, the positive vibrations and all that, then you can connect. But again, like I said, I know people that say, God doesn't listen to me, I haven't won the lottery. I'm like, oh, okay, you're really, maybe you're not on
top. Well, tell them there's a difference between praying and manifesting.
Yeah, exactly, But
I've manifesting for the hot dog.
I've actually prayed and felt the hand of God relieve some of the pain that I was feeling. And once you feel that, then there's nothing like it. Then
it's better than the lottery.
Yes,
it's much better than the lottery.
Yes.
I pray for inner peace. I pray for just to guide me and watch me and bless me and keep me safe.
And I feel like sometimes he's answering prayers because there's no coincidence in life, and sometimes you don't even realize. You just got to be open. Like when I first started with like yoga and all that stuff, I was afraid to feel what I was feeling because it was so surreal. It was so beautiful. But when you're raised in a certain direction, you're afraid to feel because they teach you that what you're feeling is not correct. It's not what you're allowed to feel. And I just said to this young gentleman, I apologize, I don't even know your name. But, okay,
no problem.
It was nice to talk to you. But I just said to him, you're very privileged to be on the path that you're on at a young age because I had to learn it at an older age. And I used to say, I want to feel that way, but I'm afraid because they told me I'm not allowed to feel that way. And I would, even when I went to the yoga studio, I felt things and I was afraid to feel them. I was afraid it was the wrong direction. I was afraid, am I going to go to hell because I'm feeling this, and stuff. And as soon as I let go of that fear and God took my hand, I was able to experience a lot more joy and a lot more peace, So what you're saying is so true. I just agree with everything you just said.
I want to share just one quick thing. In our faith, bhakti means devotion, but we say devotion to God isn't a business transaction that I pray to you and then if you give me this. But that's okay also, right?
Right.
But there's a higher thing. It's like, we say that, God has everything and so he can give it, but why miss out on him right? Why miss out on that relationship with God itself just for things? And so we say love for God isn't about getting things from God. It's just about being in his presence and being with God. And then everything is at your fingertips.
Right.
Everything is available. So for us, we say pure devotion to God is without motivation for material results. It's just...
I even believe that with kindness. If you're going to give in this world right now, don't expect anything back, because you're going to be very disappointed. If you're going to be kind and give from your heart. But a lot of people give from their heart, supposedly, and expect something back. So as soon as they don't get something back, they're like, oh, but you can't. You can't, because you're going to be disappointed. You're going to, and stuff like that. So I feel that concept is so true. So true. I love that concept.
Causeless, spontaneous love. For us, that's a big part of our path, is that he came to teach us how to have natural, spontaneous love for God.
Absolutely.
And that's our core. That's our core faith, really.
Yeah.
Spontaneous, natural love for God.
Yep.
You were going to share something?
My own, I don't get anything out of the Catholic religion, so I can't say it that I do. And what I have my own faith and my own way of praying is exactly what you're saying. And I find that if you have the gratitude and the realization that you're blessed, is an overwhelming sense of peace just for that, without asking, without saying, well, hey, let's bring me a guy, bring me this, just be grateful for the fact that I have a car to get into, I have a job to go to, and to me that's part of not to say my devotion, but my daily prayer every day. But in listening to you, I find that your practice is what I try to live, but I'm missing the connection from where you're speaking of God all night. Where does the Hare Krishna come into it? Where is the devotees of Krishna?
Great.
Where does it go from God to Krishna?
How much time do you have? I try to do it. I'll try to do it in brief. What time we got? Or we'll meet again. I come back in a few weeks and we can keep the conversation going. We're all looking for community, loving community, like-minded community. And so God solved that by having his perfect community that we're also able to enter and be part of. And we can do that in this life also to the best of our capacity, but the cultural elements of the Krishna faith, because you're saying, yes, I believe everything you believe in, so why I'm not a Krishna? It's like, right. Because we're not asking that. There's a cultural dress to every faith, right? And then there are universal principles to every faith. So what I'm explaining is the principles, that is the honest to God truth behind the faith that we practice, but yet we're saying these names and so on and so forth. So there's conversations around it, but essentially when we talk about the kingdom of God, kingdom itself has a sense of majesty behind it, right? So we don't think of it as, there is a reality where it's a kingdom and you're worshiping God, which is beautiful. The kingdom of heaven where you're worshiping God. But when you see Krishna surrounded by, it's a more intimate setting and scenery where he's inviting us to participate in that community of his own in a way where it's the life like I'm speaking of, where it's based on intimate friendship. It's based on a love relationship without the restriction in place by the reverence to the Godhead and I am small and you are great. There's the idea called prema, pure love. And the idea of prema is that God brings us up to a relationship with him and he appears in us in a way that we can actually relate with him. Because otherwise, how can we understand God? We can talk about it, we can feel it in our life, but he comes to a platform that we can experience him directly as a person. And he brings us to a place that we can have a direct exchange. And so that is called, there's cultural parts of it, right? According to the people of that time who came into that dynamic of that relationship with God. if that makes sense, right? There's a cultural dress to it, right? But then there's a deeper experience of it. And just like a Christian can go and be with Christ in a heavenly realm, it's our understanding that we can be with Krishna in his own heavenly realm. But it's not heaven in terms of, I want to enjoy there and be happy there. It's, I want to be in that pure loving relationship with you. This is according to our cultural dress. But really, it's based on that idea that we can be with him and with his community in a very intimate friendship and intimate love. And it's a dynamic experience that's ever fresh, ever evolving. And so there's a lot of details to it, but that's the essence, right? It's it's like, it sounds cheap to say it's our heaven, right? But in other words, if you as consciousness want to be in that realm with God, then he has made that available to you. For us, that is Krishna's own realm, right? And it's not a realm where he is worshipped. It's a realm where he is in friendship with, in a relationship with everyone in his realm. So it's going beyond feeling God in our presence, in our life, in our heart, to saying, coming into that perfected state of being with him in our spiritual nature. I know this is a lot of just, sounds like a lot of just word salad.
Do you want to be there all the time or just once in a while?
Well,
Or can you be there only, partially?
yeah, it's something that's realized in your heart. We say the kingdom of God is in your heart. So we understand God is not alone. He is with his devotees. He's with those who love him. Just like we are. Like if you have a community that you love, you want to be with your community. So the idea here is that those souls who want to just love God with spontaneous love, don't want anything from him, they just want to be with him, then he's God, right? He can create this world. He has created this world. So why can't he create his perfect little pocket of existence where those who purely love him exist with him? We aspire to be with Krishna in his own community where everyone is just existing on that plane of pure, loving relationship, where they're not trying to take from, but rather they're giving of their love in an exchange, in a natural loving exchange.
That's where you would naturally desire to be with those people.
Yeah, so like we would say, if as a Christian, what is your goal of life? And so for us, the goal of life to be with Christ is higher than just to practice his teachings of a moral life. Okay, like we have the commandments, right? That I'm not going to murder people, I'm not going to steal from people, I'm not going to commit adultery. These are the commandments, right? But following those commandments is one thing, but being with Christ is a higher principle, right? So for us, there's the moral side of our life, but actually being with God, what we call Krishna. Krishna is a name that means the all attractive, the sweetness. So God is a term for just the creator, right? But Krishna is a personal name of God in his aspect of pure sweetness and pure love. And that's a part of it.
You answered my question in the very last sentence.
Thank you.